Well, hi everyone. My name is Dr. Albert Bramante. Please tune into this episode with Kim Sorrelle and I. We have a great discussion coming up about mindset and self-esteem and just how to really set yourself apart. And I really encourage you to tune into this episode. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome to the show. I am so happy you're here. You're going to be so happy you're here. I have got a guest who is unlike any other person on the face of this earth. I know no PhD who is also a talent agent and teaches at a university and does all the things that this man does, like an incredible wealth of knowledge, incredible stuff that he's doing. I'm so excited for you to meet him. Albert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so
You.
happy that you are here. We're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. And I want people first, though, to get to know you. So I would love to hear about 8-year-old Albert.
Well, all right. So 8-year-old Albert, that was wow. That was in the 80s, mid 80s, I'll say that. So the music was great. I love the 80s music, hence it's because I was a child of the 80s. So for me, 8 years old, brings back memories. So I just became an uncle for the first time, ironically, because my sister is 13 years older than I am, and she had given birth to her first child. So I was an uncle at the age of 8, which is sort of unusual for most any 8-year-old to say. So that was probably significantly during that year. Yeah, I mean, my childhood was interesting. I'll say that. I It wasn't really bad in a way, but it was definitely challenging. I was born, go earlier than that, obviously. So when I was born, I was a premature baby, and I was 6 weeks ahead of time. And I'm the youngest of five. I kind of think, and even though they'll never admit it, I kind of admit on some level I was the whoops, didn't plan on that baby happening. But obviously, I'm here, and a lot of children are unfortunately, conceived in that way. So, long story short, I had some issues, a lot of health problems growing up, which I mostly overcame them at 8. At that point, I was sort of already on the mend because I had some surgeries. And I had some great doctors, pediatricians when I was growing up. So everything was going on path. I was the type of child that was ahead of my years peer wise and intellectually wise. So I really didn't know how to connect with other children my own age. I was great at connecting with adults. And I think that was like my go-to area. Like when we go to family functions, I'd be more with the adults than with the kids.
Yeah.
So, and it makes sense now because again, I was the youngest and sort of like the only child because I didn't grow up with any siblings my age. I did have cousins. I do have cousins, but I didn't grow up in a sense in the same house with them.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've known kids like you that just connect more with adults, and all the kids are off playing. And there's this one kid who's just sitting and just soaking it in, talking to the aunts and uncles and
That's
loving every minute of it. And
Yeah,
so,
that was me. That was me. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Did you have any idea at that age what you wanted to do later in life, what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I, well, it was interesting. I think I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go someplace into the doctor. I remember my grandmother, when she was alive, I made a promise I would be a doctor. She was like, I hope to live to see that. So I didn't know what doctor I was going to be. That fluctuated. I was going to be a surgeon, I was going to be a dentist, I was going to be, an eye doctor, and so it just flowed. The one thing that I think kind of sort of precursor to me being a talent agent was, so I grew up in a family of athletes. My older brothers, my father pure athletes, football, baseball, coaching, all of that. Playing or coaching. And no, so naturally, I tried to put a ball and mitt and bat and all football gear on me. I had no interest in it. I couldn't, not only the high coordination problems, I just couldn't handle the sport. I didn't want to do it. And I think their notion was, okay, we're gonna toughen this kid up, which that was the old school, Gen X and part of Gen X. So that was like we got to tough the boys up. And I don't remember the story, but this is told several times about my family. One day I was playing, my father said, "Why won't you just do this?" And I turned to my father and said, "I don't want to play on the team. I want to own the team." And that I think quieted that down. And I don't think they really tried to get me to work, play sports afterwards. They realized this was not for me. I was more to reading. I love, you put a book in my hand, I can go for hours just reading. So that's where I was kind of different. Again, like most of the children, they were playing. I was reading.
Yeah.
That was my playtime in a sense. So I think that was kind of like a precursor. It wasn't really till I hit high school that I realized I wanted to be a psychologist and into psychology because I spent a lot of time in the library. I read books about the brain, I read books about behavior, and it just piqued my curiosity. And I realized this is something I really want to do.
Very interesting. Yeah, I remember taking psychology class in high school and
Mhm.
loving it. And then I took it in college and hated it. So, good for
Yeah,
you.
I can identify with that because, to be completely, honest with you, my first, obviously my first year, I took Psych 101, which is like the gateway course. Everybody, it's kind of like a core class for everybody. And I didn't, what wasn't the best experience for me. I think it had to do with the professor. It was just not a very good course. And I remember walking out of the semester was over thinking, almost about to have an identity crisis because I was so heck bent on I'm going to be a psychologist. And but when I spoke to now, of course, many years later, and spoken to hundreds and thousands of psychologists, almost everyone didn't like Psych 101. I was like, okay, I feel better. It's just the way the course is set up. Even as a professor, it's probably my least favorite to teach.
Mm, that's so
Uh,
interesting. Yeah.
my teaching assignment. It's usually because when they ask me every semester, what do you prefer to teach? And like Psych 101 is like the bottom of my list. Now, of course, I'll be happy to teach it if they need it, but for me, it's not. I think it's just the way the course is set up because it's a survey-based course and because it's a so much information packed in 16 weeks that it's not. And there's so much information because psychology is such a broad field. And I think that's where I think it surprises a lot of people because most people, when they think psychology, it's okay, I'm going to counsel you. What are you feeling? And that's only like 10 or 20% of the entire field of psychology. It's just therapy. There's a whole other 80%. But so I went to college and then I took child psych, I took adolescent, I took theories of personality and all the advanced level psych classes, and that kind of brought it back home. Like, okay, this is really what I want to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I gotta say, when I was taking it, I wondered if it was a way to weed people out because
That
it was a big class, hundreds of kids in the class, right? And I
y-
thought everyone probably loved it in high school and thought, I want to be a psychologist. And
well,
then,
because people may have read like Cosmo magazine and they talk about human behavior and you think, oh, well, this is really want to do this. And no, and talk about weeding out. Now, another thing every psych major has to take is statistics and research methods. Now, I feel those are classes that will weed people out because
yeah,
psychology is a very popular major in colleges and universities, but they have to weed out a little bit. So, and most people who are into psychology don't like math and science in a sense. So I think that weeds it out. But I loved statistics. That was like another thing that made me. an odd duck in college because I loved statistics.
Uh-huh.
And I was like my class where I really shined in. Where others were struggling, I sort of was like the tutor. I sort of was the almost the unofficial teaching assistant of the class.
Interesting. Yeah. So how does that tie into being a talent agent?
Well, that was never planned. To be quite honest with you, I never planned on being a talent agent. I was interested in the arts. I mean, when I was in high school, I was in a drama club, and during my undergraduate studies, I did take two like acting classes as well as one theater class. Theater theory type class, and I really liked it. But I had no really interest in it. So, years later, I was going finishing my master's degree. Now, this is back right around the turn of the century, into the 21st century. So I was a full-time grad student, but I had off during the summer. So I was bored, and one of the things I was very into were talk shows. Maybe not the most classiest thing, but I was into talk shows. And this was like much different than they are now. But one of the talk shows I was watching a lot was Sally Jesse Raphael, who
Yeah.
most people may
Red
not.
glasses. Yeah.
Black
Loves.
glasses.
Yeah.
And there was I was on their website, and I just randomly filled out the contact form, not thinking anything was of it. I'm like, hey, I really like the show. I really like the counseling that you're providing. Afterwards, I said, anywhere I told them to go for a master's degree, anywhere that I can collaborate with you. I I tell you, I didn't expect a response, but I did get one. About a month and a half later, I'm opening my email and I see response to your website submission. I'm like, oh, what's this? Because I forgot I did it. And then I opened it up and then I saw my email and saying, where are you located? And I answered back to Joe's like, oh, we're looking for an intern.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So I did that, met, and so my last semester in grad school, I was interning on a talk show, which now made me pretty popular amongst my grad school peers.
Uh-huh.
So now the role I was playing was not production side, but there's a most talk shows now had to have what they call an aftercare department or aftercare specialist because of the incident happened with Jenny Jones, if anybody remembers back in the 90s, was somebody actually was killed after the show recorded. So they kind of needed to legally to kind of have some sort of follow up and mandated counseling if people needed it. So that's where I came in. I would do the actual follow up and helping them find resources in their town. So whether it be a marriage counseling, drug treatment facility, anger management, whatever they needed, I would research providers in their town and coordinate that and set that up. So that was an experience for me. That was like I think my first show business experience, and it was eye opening. And when I say eye opening, it changed my opinion for talk shows completely. What I realized is most people have no idea what's going on if you're not in the industry.
Yeah, well, I would love to hear because
Oh,
I too love talk shows, especially around that time. And we had Phil Donahue and of course Oprah, the queen of
yeah.
all talk shows.
Oprah, Montel
Yeah,
Williams is big, Maury Povich.
right, right.
So what I found, and this is what when I talk to other people afterwards, and this is kind of universal. What I found was most of it, if not all of it, is scripted.
Interesting.
So there's a teleprompter that Sally was reading from, and there was also an earpiece that she was wearing. And she was fed questions. She was fed, say this, move over here, take off your glasses, and this really that directed. Stand up and or motion for the audience to applause, and then there was like the applause lights, when the audience had to applause, then they would tell when the audience is gasped to make that gasping sound.
Oh,
So it
gosh.
was all a show, really, if you think about it. The issues were real. Now, one thing that really kind of turned me off about that, well, one was the scripted. The second thing was the manipulation. Was they would take the guests into separate rooms where they didn't speak to each other, and they would have one producer with one guest, another producer with another guest, instigating them before the show.
Mm.
So because they wanted people to walk off, they wanted people to either show its hair, they wanted people to scream, cry, have meltdowns, because that's the ratings. So if they had to manufacture and manipulate it, the interesting case, I remember I spoke to this husband. I called to follow up with him, and he was nice to me, but I could tell he was so mad. And he's like, "You don't," and he told me, "You don't understand. The show ruined my life." And I explained to him, I said, "Well, tell me what happened." Now, the issue was it was a show about forgiveness, about spouses who stepped down on their wives. Now, he said he did step out on his wife. That was a real case. But prior to them going on the show, they had already reconciled. So they were already, you know, mending, but they thought they'd go on a show to tell the story. What they didn't realize is that once they got into the studio, they separated the husband and the wife. And the wife was kind of threatened and said, he's going to ask for forgiveness. You have to say no. You have to say that the marriage is over and be firm about it. And if you don't say that the marriage is over, we're not paying for your flight back home. You're going to be stranded
Wow.
because you're not honoring your agreement to be on the show. And of course, he had no idea because he was not privy to this conversation with another room, another producer, and who just kept saying, "Okay, you need to really lean in on how many people you cheat. You said you cheated on one woman. You need to say you cheated on two or three."
Mm.
So she was blindsided. He was blindsided, and it created a whole host of things because he come on and like we forgiven, and she turned around and said, "No, I don't forgive you," and he was shocked. So naturally, they when the show was over, he explained it what the situation was, and they made up. And he said, I never would have agreed to be on the show had I known that." So that was definitely kind of an eye-opening experience for me to say, okay, maybe I shouldn't, I don't want to work in talk shows ever again.
So interesting. Yeah, I had no idea. You figure that some of the real extreme shows are scripted and, people that are jumping on the chair and throwing stuff across the room and, that it's all about the drama and whatever. And
Mhm.
you are not the father, and whatever. But
Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought that about Sally Jesse.
yeah. It was. I mean, the issues were real. Like I mean, my experience is work. I mean, I would be sometimes work, mediating even after the show. The issues were real. The stories were a bit canned. Also, what disturbed I think a lot of people and even surprised me was the on-camera Sally Jesse Raphael and the real Sally Jesse Raphael were not the same at all.
Really?
Yeah, she was not a very sociable person. I'll just say that. So guests like when they would go on a commercial break, guests would try to communicate with her and she would shut, not like totally ignore them. Or even or brush them off. And because all she did was come in for an hour, an hour before the show, get briefed about what was happening, and then go with the script. And then soon it was over, she would go back home. Like, I'm done. I'm out of here. So that was a bit surprising, because and the show was like, oh, Sally really cares. I'm like, she doesn't. I heard that from other talk show hosts, other talk shows experiences too, that the hosts are a lot different off camera than they are
Yeah.
on camera. And
Interesting.
that makes sense now. Knowing, been years in business, that makes complete sense. Because you're developing a persona.
Right.
That's what you're
Right.
doing. So after the internship was over, I graduated, and then this was the same year, unfortunately, 9/11 happened and 2001. So my person who was my coordinator at Sally just right up, my supervisor, was on the ground doing crisis intervention work, and she called me up. She's like, I need your help. I need you to come help me. We're working with, these different artist groups and advocacy groups, and we're doing these, doing some crisis intervention advocacy work, and we need you here. I was like, oh, perfect. I wasn't, I was still looking for a job. I just received my master's degree. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. And then I started working with actors because I started being combined with actors, and it kind of reignited my interest from college and high school. And so I did the thing a little bit as an actor back in New York in the early 2000s. Wasn't for me, but I liked being on set for actors. And I found myself looking after other actors, finding them work. And then I had a couple of people say, hey, I wish you could be my agent. And my wheels started turning because I really didn't like being an actor, but I liked working with actors. So my wheels started turning, well, what if I became an agent? What does that entail? And so 2004, I started my first agency. And I didn't know at the time. And of course, to really not make my family go completely lose their minds, I said, I'm going to go back for my PhD because I was already now teaching part-time at this point. So I was like, with a master's degree. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go back for my PhD and make everyone happy and make myself happy because I wanted to be a PhD my whole life, at least a doctor. So I was like, let me fulfill the
Well,
promise to
yeah,
myself
exactly. You
and to
promised your grandma. You had to do
my
it.
grandma.
Yeah.
So I enrolled in an online PhD program. So, and it was a very busy time because I was running an agency, teaching, and at night online doing research. Now, also a little secret about online learning is it's not as easy as people think it's going to be. It's actually, I think, tough, more challenging. Because I was in college for 6 years between my bachelor's and master's at a brick and mortar in person system. Now I'm totally online, which this was before they even had video conferencing and Zoom. So everything was just discussion boards and writing and all of that. So it was a lot of work. That's why when people sometimes, step on or say like, "Oh, there's nothing," I'm like, no, I worked harder
Oh,
than I think if I were in a regular classroom. So when I started my PhD program, we have to do this dissertation, which is a huge monumental project. And at first I was like, well, what am I going to do it on? I mean, how am I going to spend time? And then when I was at being an agent, what I was noticing with these actors, they were shying away from some of the big roles, or they would self-sabotage by not showing up for appointments. And
interesting.
so I couldn't figure out what's going on. What's up with these damn actors?
Okay.
And when I went, did a brainstorming session with my advisor, because we had to do some face-to-face time at the online college, so we had to go to different places across the country for conferences and for intensives. And I remember sitting there and we started brainstorming, and she's like, "Tell me some burning questions." And I said, "I'm just gonna go. I didn't know." I was like, I'm an agent, and here is what's going on." And she turned around and she goes, "That's a brilliant topic." And so my dissertation became self-defeating behavior in performing artists. So that was kind of like my way to blend the two together, psychology and being an agent. And so years after when I received my PhD, which took a while, it took a little bit longer than usual because I also in the middle of this, I was hired full time at the time to teach.
Oh, wow.
And when you teach full time, it's a lot more involved than just teaching because you have to do office hours, you have to do committee work, you have to do community service to the college, you have to advise, you have to do all these things that would make it really a full-time job. Even though I was only teaching a certain number of classes a semester, it's much more than that. Because I'm a part-time instructor, I just come in and teach and leave.
Oh,
That's a big difference. So I did that for 5 years. That slowed up a lot of stuff because I had to really devote the teaching position. So my agency kind of suffered, and of course, it delayed a lot with my dissertation.
yeah, I would
Fast forward,
imagine.
fast forward 5 years later, that ended. Now I had time to say, okay, I have two choices, but really now that I'm not teaching anymore, because at that time I was let go, I can either do a couple of things. I can either find another teaching job full time, or I can finish a dissertation, which was like like my Achilles heel at the moment at that time. And let me really spend a lot of time working on my baby, which is a talent agency. And so I did all of that. And then a year and a half later, had my PhD to that 10 years ago, actually. So it took me several years after submitting my PhD. I said, you know what? I worked so hard on this dissertation. Let me turn it into a book.
Nice. Yeah.
And so that's where I wrote, published my first book in 2024.
Wow. Wow. What a journey. What a story. What a journey. And yeah, and of course, now it all ties together. The one thing leading to the next, leading to the next. And life is kind of fun that way, seeing where you're going to land for a period of time or whatever. But yeah, because you would think, uh, just looking at it, that they're three completely different things, right? So, psychology and then teaching psychology and then being a talent agent. But in your book, you bring out that as a talent agent, you have to deal with some of this stuff with
Mhm.
self-esteem and with imposter syndrome or, with that kind of stuff. So I would think that would set you apart as a talent agent. There's probably not a lot of people that work on stuff like that, like you're able to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I think for me, what helps me with to do kind of both, in a sense, I think it helps me understand the actors a little bit more, um, and to be able to kind of connect with them in a sense, rather than necessarily being, frustrated at some certain behaviors. I can understand them a little bit more, and it helps me. So I can actually provide like coaching, on a more mindset, which a lot, not to toot my own horn, but a lot of agents can't do that, or not, because they're focused on, at the end of the day, the actors are money makers. So sometimes some agents look at their actors as commodities and more of a, business sense, and not necessarily as people or as human beings.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I could see how that would happen because that's your bread and butter.
Yeah, and that's I could totally say I could totally identify with that, because at the end of the day, it's true. At the end of the day, we're focused on, really making money. And the type of business that we operate out of, as employment agents, we don't make any money unless the actor makes money. So we're essentially, when we work with an actor in the beginning, we're working for free
Mm.
until the actor books money, and then we can take, a commission, which is usually 10% in our world. So, and that makes it a challenging profession at times. And not going to be completely honest, because we're not on a salary position. This is not a salary type of job or a salary type business or guaranteed income.
Right.
I mean, this is why show business is just so challenging in general for everybody, even for actors, because there's no guarantee of income.
Yeah. I would imagine it's like feast or famine. And
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is feast or famine, depending on how you look at it. And especially when there's so many actors, in New York, in a sense, or LA, depending on, what coast you're on. So there's hundreds of thousands of actors, only a small number of roles
right.
that are
Right.
available. So it's altered competitive industries just to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. So competitive. And yeah, which is why a lot of actors are also waiters or they're doing something else at the same time because they have to eat. And
Hmm.
and it's such a small percentage that are the Tom Cruises, Brad Pitts, Hugh Grants, whoever, that I was thinking about that the other day, actually, is I only know so many names. right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of actors that are at the level where you might see them and recognize their face, but not know their name.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
those are what we call like general working actors that work all the time. And they often have very good careers, but they'll never be household names. But if you watch a lot of TV, you'll be like, oh, I recognize this actor, I recognize that actor. I've seen them so many times.
right, right. So tell me about the actors that you work with.
Hmm. Well, I work mainly there in New York because I'm a New York-based agency. So they're what's working in the New York market. So I have clients right now that are working in musicals. I have some clients that are working in TV at the moment. I have some clients that are working on commercials. So I book across the board in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, interesting. Okay, so as you're doing this, you figure out that they need some boosting, they need some help because it's a mental game. I mean, it has to be a mental game because I've always thought too, like how do you handle rejection? Like
Hmm.
that's a skill, really, to know how to handle rejection, to get back up again and go to the next one, right? So,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
and so here's a couple of things that I would often say when it comes to rejection, because I hear a lot of people say, that tell me, "Oh, I wish I could be an actor. I just don't like all the rejection." So coming from my kind of a coaching standpoint, what I often like to say is let's reframe that or twist that around and not take it personal because it's really not personal. Because when you say the word rejection, it kind of means I'm turning you away as a person, I'm turning you down as a person. And that's not entirely accurate. It's just you're not right for that role. It didn't go your way. They went with another option. So what I often say is, and this is a gentle reframe. I didn't. Now this is a quote that I really like, but I didn't. I can't take credit for it. I didn't come up with it. But it was the quote is, "There's no such thing as rejection. Only a gentle reminder that your services are not needed today."
Ah, very good. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I think is powerful for the type of work that we've done. So if you take the idea that there's no such thing as rejection, it now it it takes a lot of the personal effect because most of the time, especially a lot of actors, they're very passionate, which means that they can also be wrapped up in emotions. And why didn't they like me? Or why, I don't understand why they're not liking me. And I say completely take that out of the equation because it's not about that.
Right.
It's not about whether they like you or not. It's really a business thing. Are you right for the role or are you not? And the truth of the matter is, there's so many factors as to why an actor may get cast in a project and why they may not. And a lot of times, those options, those reasons, have nothing to do with your talent, have nothing to do with you as a person. It's just the vision of the character, the vision of the film. You may not be the right option compared to somebody else who auditioned. So if we look at and because it's estimated about 30% of your chances of being cast has to do with your audition, which is not a high number. But what we can do is if you get out of your head and you take away the stakes of that, you can maximize that 30% so that it's in your favor.
Interesting. Interesting. So only 30% has to do with the actual audition. So I'm sure that it would be easy to have a picture in your head. Like when I read a book, when you read a book and you picture what the characters look like, and then they make a movie and the characters don't look like they were in your head. But I think it'd be easy. You write a screenplay or you're casting, you have a picture in your mind what a character would look like. So, if you got black hair and you go in and they want a blonde, then you're
Yeah.
probably not going to get picked.
And not only that, it's like the vision can change because one time, there's a lot of times they may want a specific idea, but then somebody comes across, does a good read and says, I want that person. And
Mhm.
it may be completely different than the original idea that they had in their head. So a lot of times that's why I say do your best because you never know who will get picked. Because I've done this a lot too, even with my clients. Like if I had a client like, oh, say audition for a role for a TV show, I would then watch the episode that that client auditioned for. And
Mhm.
sometimes I would see the actor who was cast, and sometimes it's a similar tip to my client. Other times, like, whoa, they went in a completely different direction there.
Interesting. Yeah. 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 So, wow. Yeah. So somehow you have to keep them pumped up, which that is great to reframe the whole rejection. It's not rejection. It's just not your part, just not for you. You're just not needed that day. I like
Hmm.
that. But even going into the audition, I would think there's a certain level of confidence so that you come across the right way. Is that something that you have to work on too with people?
Yeah. Confidence is really important. Um, I think that's the main thing is just having confidence in yourself. And one of the kind of a way to do that is this is again a mindset shift is to sort of not take away the stakes of that in a sense. So when you're a lot of times actors hear the word audition and they freeze because that means judgment. That means I'm doing that. Now it is an audition. We're not going to deny that, but reframe that as a performance. So most actors they become actors because they love to perform. So if we reframe that and say this is your 2 minute opportunity to perform, and that this is again you are performing in a sense no matter what. So you have that opportunity to perform. Now, what happens afterwards? That's extra. So instead of looking like that as a test, as a weeding out tool, you have 2 minutes to go in and perform. That's what you set out to do.
Yeah, I can see where that is quite a shift, quite a different way to look at it. Like even for speakers, that freeze ahead of time or are nervous ahead of time. If you just realize that that's your time to go out there, do your thing, and whatever happens after. Is
Absolutely, it's if you don't be attached to the outcome, and that's why it's very helpful for actors. Like as soon as the audition is over, let it go completely. You know, dismiss that, let it go. It's over. The next, your area of focus should be your next appointment, your next audition. So it's like, thank you, that was great, but what's next? And therefore, it's you're not wrapped up in beating yourself in the head, up in the head, going, "What's going to happen to my next? Is this is that?" You're just letting go in a sense.
yeah, yeah, which is kind of a good thing for life in general, right? Like you do something, it's over. So it can be easy to second guess yourself. Did I do it right? Am I, doing the whole thing right? Did I succeed? Whatever. But I think there's stuff in life you have to just let go.
Yeah, and that's just a good tip in general. Is
Mhm.
to just let go because it's freeing in that. And because sometimes actors will be like, I haven't heard back. Because the reality industry is, and at least with actors and auditions, you rarely hear anything back. Sometimes they may come back and say no, which is rare, but very often you don't hear that. You don't hear anything. And which can definitely be a bit jarring. You
Uh,
put all heart and soul into things and you don't hear back. But that's the reality of it. So this is why it's a good idea to just let it go. It's over, let it go.
yeah.
Now,
Right.
the fact that's great because, and that's what and I'm not just this is something that new. I didn't come up with this at all. I heard this a lot from working actors. Well, the advice that they give to like newer actors is treat the audition as a job, as an opportunity to perform, and let it go, afterwards. And that's why I think that contributes to a lot of their success rate later on.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, interesting. So you in your book, you dive into self-esteem
Hmm.
and deeply dive into self-esteem. And I'm older than you are, and I can tell you that like growing up or whatever in life, it's sort of been this thing of uh, don't let your ego get too big, or don't be egotistical, and don't like self-care is something that people talk about now, didn't used to talk about because it was self-sacrifice, I think, rather than self-care. And loving yourself can be too much, whatever. Personally, I found the opposite to be true. But how do you get from your upbringing and this is what you've been shown and taught to, wait a minute, I can confidently step out and do my thing?
Hmm. Absolutely. And the one that's a biggest piece of the puzzle is self-esteem. That's a big form of the thing here is self-esteem. And one of the best ways to get increase someone's self-esteem is to just by taking action and doing things. And also socially, what's important, a big component of self-esteem is the company that you keep,
Same.
the company that you surround yourself with. So if I'm around people, let's just say, that are constantly negative and complaining, there's a popular statement we all are familiar, misery loves company.
Right.
That's gonna rub off on me. Now I'm gonna start being negative too. And or if I hang around with, and the other side of things, if I hang around with people that are positive and that are doing things with themselves, their careers, there's a good chance that's going to motivate me to do well.
Mhm.
And so I talk about this in my book, Proximity is Power. So hanging out with some really successful people is going to be important. Also stepping outside your comfort zone too. And even doing small actions every day can often raise self-esteem. Volunteering for others. So one thing, especially for actors, the one thing I think that is so important is to have other interests outside of acting, hobbies, passions, even volunteer work. And this has been like documented over and over again that one way to really raise happiness is to help other people, serve others. Because when we're in a charitable state, what very often happens is it raises our happiness level.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing what service to other people can do. It's amazing. I kind of look at it this way, Albert, is I remember the first time I went to the Dominican Republic, there was an earthquake, not an earthquake, I'm sorry, a hurricane, that the eye of the hurricane went right over Santo Domingo. So there was a lot of buildings down. There was just a ton of destruction. There were people that lost their homes, and so I went to go help. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go help. I'm going to go down there and I'm going to help. But what I got in return was so much greater than anything I could give. And then time after time, it's just kind of been proven to me that you can't outgive. Like what you get in return is so much greater. And not that you give to get, but it's just the way life works, right? Where you just get
Mhm.
more out of it than you can ever pour into it.
Absolutely, and it's not about you. It's not transactional because it's like when you give and help others, it gives you the fulfillment that not that materialistic items are not going to
Mhm.
provide for you. In a sense, it's going to give you a real sense of fulfillment and happiness. I know some psychologists and therapists actually with working with clients that are depressed all the time, encourage them to spend a couple hours a week volunteering.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I can see where that would be really helpful. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
it raises your self-esteem. It just and it gives you purpose in your life.
Mhm. Well, and there's so many opportunities out there. Some people might think, well, what do I do? How do I do it? But oh my word, the number of opportunities is huge. I mean, you can go downtown and work at the soup kitchen or, work with the homeless in some way. You can help your neighbor carry in their groceries, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's so many opportunities. You just have to look for them and be open and oftentimes too, if it's something that you love, that you have a passion for, if
Hmm.
there's an age group you have a passion for, like you love elementary age kids, well, often they're looking for people to come and read or come and tutor or come in and help with some way with kids. So you can fulfill your passion while you're helping other people, and it's a win, 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 right?
100%. Absolutely. And it really just it's one way to really boost your profile up, because you can't and then of course when you have higher self-esteem you can't be down, you won't have your anxiety levels will be a lot lower, and it'll just be better for everybody in a sense.
Right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is so good. So, what do you say to people that struggle with self-esteem?
Well,
Go volunteer, yes, but what else do you say? Like, how do you see people struggling and the outcome of that, and then how do you get them out of that?
well, first to admit to, just to know that it's okay, to struggle, and normalize that. But one thing is just to do stuff differently. So go outside for a walk. Go um, take a break from what you're doing in a sense, because the problem with a lot of times with low self-esteem is that when you're bored, you start to ruminate over and over again.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. So get out of that. Get out of what you're doing. Go change, shift gears and go do something else.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Great idea. Go to there's places popping up. Uh, they've been in Japan for a while, but like places where you can go and have tea with cats and just be or puppy,
now
right?
that would be a dream for me. I mean, a cat cafe, dog, I would be in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I could have my office there, that would be, and I'd be in heaven. But that would be great too, because animals are also very powerful ways to raise a profile or self-esteem. But also, so is your company. Now, you could maybe not physically hang out, but virtually, consume content of like thought leaders and positive people, podcasts, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of it out there. So yeah, go find that stuff and figure it out. And yeah, and so for people who think that their ego's going to be too big, or that they've been taught not to think about themselves as much, or not to like themselves as much, or I don't know, whatever it is that kind of skews things in people's minds, where it's like, well, if I have a lot of self-esteem, it means that I think I'm so great, and I can't think I'm so great, and
Mhm.
because my mother taught me not to, or whatever. Well, how do you address those people?
Well, it's sort of like the programming that we receive. I mean, that's the one thing too. Um, what I try to explain is our parents are operating on scripts that they grew up with, and they're doing the best they can with what they had. So what I explain is like, yes, what your mom said at that time was important, but it doesn't apply now. That was then, this is now. That would be the first thing. And also, let's explain things. Let's look at your mother's background, because The one thing that we learn, I think, as adults is that our parents aren't perfect. They're flawed just like we are.
Right. Now, I would like to think my kids think I'm perfect. Now
Yeah,
they tell me I'm not. So I know they don't, but I still would like to think that they think I am.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's true. You know, nobody's perfect. And they're a product of their parents who are a product of their parents and so on. And right.
And that's just part of the education. Like, look, explaining that. Like, look, this is where your parents are operating from, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to adopt that as well.
Mm. Yeah, so true, so true. And you hope that you do better than your parents. And then your kids are gonna hope that they do better than you and so on down the line, right? So maybe
Hmm.
down the road somewhere there's perfect parents. Oh no, I mean, I do think that the Cleavers were pretty good parents. I think
Yeah.
Ward
Well,
and June did a pretty good job, but yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So, holy cow. So, you teach and you've got this book that is so powerful. It's so, Albert, you did such a great job with this book. I'm so glad that you decided to take all the information you gathered and everything that you learned and put it into a book for the rest of us because it's really valuable. Are you seeing it used as a tool or how would people use it? Who's it for?
well, I would say I mean, anybody who deals with issues of self-doubt or self-sabotage should look into this book. And this, even though it's written for actors, with mind in a sense, because that was my intention, anybody can benefit from that.
Mm, absolutely. So true. So true. Self-sabotage is a big thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, like you can be so confident and think you're going to go out and you're going to, grab the world by the tail and then somebody says something or something happens. And all of a sudden you want to crawl up in a ball and say, forget it. I guess I'm not that good, or maybe I shouldn't go pursue that.
Yeah, I mean that should be your not from your self-esteem standpoint, but if something isn't right, then it's okay to not pursue that if you don't feel it's in your heart. But if you want to do it, go for it and do it to make yourself happy because that's really what, at the end of the day, you're not living to please your parents anymore.
Ah, good point. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That is a really good point. So how
Hmm.
do you deal with self-sabotage? How do you recognize it and then deal with it?
Well, the important and the reason why it's sneaky, self-sabotage is sneaky, is we don't realize it. In a sense, it's not. It's something that we don't see. It's not like we're not walking around saying, "Hey, I self-sabotage."
Right. Yeah, I've not heard those words from anybody before. Yes.
Yeah, nobody goes around saying that. However, it's a pattern that will set cut and affect the behavior. So the important thing is to become aware of things and to become aware of that this is happening.
Then once you're aware, what do you do?
Then you take steps to improve it. So changing your routine, being more prepared, being more disciplined, being more focused. So and then kind of not just being worried about why is it happening. Are you afraid? There's something you're afraid of.
Mm,
Are you afraid of failure? Or are you afraid of success? What is it exactly that you're scared of?
yeah, interesting.
And then addressing that because again, that's the only way it's going to stop is if you address the core issue.
Yeah, very interesting. And it's interesting that you said afraid of failure, but you also said afraid of success.
Yes.
That's a real thing.
And that's a real thing too. So it really is it really is true because I've seen that so many times because it's fear of change. It's fear of and also an identity shift. Because if you're successful, if you land that whatever it is you're setting out to do, your identity can change.
Interesting.
And the one thing for human beings, the one thing we don't like is change.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah. Status quo is just so much easier, right?
Comfort, status quo and comfort.
Yeah. 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 But I was taught years ago that one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is to give yourself grace to change
Hmm.
and embrace change rather than fear it or run away from it, shy away from it, but instead embrace it and go, wow, okay, well, that was then and this is now. And so this new thing is good. Changing to something else can be so positive and so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So for the aspiring actors out there, what is the words of wisdom that you would have for them?
So one thing, this is a career. This is not a sprint. This is a long journey. This is a journey. It's going to at least have a 10 or 20-year plan. Number one. Number two, be resourceful. Have other things on your plate that give you fulfillment. Have a survival job lined up. Some alternative way that you can fund yourself and provide a living wage for yourself. That would be another thing. Network, network, network. Your tribe, your community is so important. You want to hang out with other successful working actors. And again, some of the simple mindset shift. There's no such thing as rejection. And to really just treat the audition as performances and have fun.
Yeah. 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 Great advice. Great advice. So for all the aspiring actors out there, I always admire parents that that uh don't try to talk their kid out of it, that say, wow, this is your dream, this is your passion, go for it. Because that can be a hard thing to do as a parent. Like you said, you kind of had to keep your parents happy because they're like, really, a traveler or a talent
Talent,
agent? Are you
yeah,
really going to be making money at that? Whatever. But I think the same is true. You've got a kid who says they want to be an actor. It's not the same as a kid saying, I want to be a doctor. And
yeah,
yeah. So the parents that say go for it, chase your dream, kudos to them. I think that's a really great thing to do.
absolutely. And that's a big thing too, because a lot of my clients, a lot of actors I know may not have the most supportive family.
Mm.
Where it's like, okay, that's great, you want to be an actor, but when are you going to get a real job?
Yeah, right, right, right. And actors get paid when they have jobs. So,
Yes,
it is a job.
it is a job, and you're working a lot, really hard to behind the scenes to get that next job. So that in itself is necessarily working.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, our time has gone by so fast. You've been great. Like this is such great
Thank
information.
you. I really
And
enjoy doing my time here.
yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for being here. And the things that you talked about, self-esteem and getting
Hmm.
rid of the word rejection and reframing things and it's just so valuable, so wise. And let your kid be an actor if they want to be an actor. I think that's so great. If they change
Live
their
your
mind, they
dream.
change their mind. Right, exactly. So yeah, so thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you, find you?
So you can find me at albertbramante.com and also on, Facebook and LinkedIn.
Mhm. Yep. And then your book's available, Amazon, wherever.
Yes, absolutely. Amazon is great. You can find I have it available as a paperback, a Kindle, and an audiobook.
Nice, nice, very nice, nice. Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for everything. And thank you all for joining us today. And
Mhm.
I just want to say that I pray that you keep your heart open and live your love loud.